More crucial than ever to know where these guys are ranking and what they've been doing over the course of an entire year. So today, we're going to dig into it and go position by position, ranking everybody heading into week 11. And I've got some prizes to hit on. And before we get into it all, of course, I do have to reference for the SPAGS rankings. I'm not trying to rank just for this week. What I am ranking on is what the role has been over the course of a year, what these guys have done, how they performed, especially in metrics like the expected points added metric that I swear by, that I use from Sportsifil Solutions, excuse me, of course, stuttering the beginning of a video. A great way to get more viewers in. The SPAGS rankings go on today. Let's get into it right away. And let's start with a man that I have to take my lumps on. Actually, let's start with Jalen Hurts. I'll do it easy right up top. So Jalen Hurts, bye week here. We know the deal. He throws it deep. He runs more than anybody in the league. The efficiency metrics also coming along a little better. 0.04 EPA per pass, 0.1 EPA per dropback. All of that looks good. But again, the main thing that drives Jalen Hurts' success in terms of what I perceive for fantasy, throwing it deep 4.4 times per game, running 9.8 times per game. These are elite metrics. They give you both a floor and a ceiling in fantasy football. So Jalen Hurts, our number one QB once again. Patrick Mahomes at number 2 moves up despite the bye. He's efficient everywhere. We know that. I do think for these metrics, obviously the efficiency going to be driving Patrick Mahomes more than his actual fantasy performance has been. We've only seen him crest over 30 fantasy points once this year. That is not the kind of thing you necessarily want to see for a guy like Mahomes who was drafted as highly as he was. But again, every single game he's out there with efficiency, 0.06 EPA per pass, 0.11 EPA per dropback. He doesn't run enough, doesn't throw it deep enough, 3.7 deep throws per game, 4.7 rushes per game, but he is still doing enough out there to add value to this metric and add value to your fantasy points and all of that. But he's not Lamar, he's not Jalen Hurts, but he is a guy that can create value for an entire stack. So obviously Patrick Mahomes, we know the deal there. That's why he's not number 2. And I'm speed running through these guys because I want to get to the guy in the thumbnail, Kyler Murray. You guys know I'm always willing to take my lumps on guys that I was wrong about. And I'm not sure over the course of a year that Kyler Murray will hold up the way that he looked in his first week. But you know the big run. You might have seen the highlight on social media this week, the overhead view of him scrambling around like a Tecmo Bowl, Bo Jackson, basically, to get the big play that ended up winning the Cardinals the game. That was a spot for Kyler Murray where I didn't think he was going to have that right away. I frankly didn't think he was going to be motivated enough to do those kind of plays anymore after what we saw last year. We know there was some acrimony in the past between Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury, but Kyler Murray, to me, from what these numbers look like, kind of back, at least in terms of the usage. In terms of the efficiency, not so much. Negative 0.09 EPA per pass is not that great, but he dropped back 36 times. He had a 0.03 EPA per drop back. So what he did basically was create value on dropbacks. He didn't create as much value actually passing. So that's a point of concern. If he's not efficient passing, the upside is going to be capped a little bit. He did throw it deep 5 times in that game. Again, a great metric to look at as well because that's going to create value downfield. It didn't actually convert any of them into a touchdown, but also didn't get sacked, didn't get picked on anything. So I think a good sign there. 0.2 EPA on his 5 deep throws. He also ran it 6 times, good for a 0.8 EPA, which right now would be the highest of any QB in the league. Obviously, it's a 1-game sample size. So that's going to come down. But the rushing that Kyler Murray showed, I don't think was there the last few years. Cliff Kingsbury either beat it out of him or Kyler just didn't want to put himself on the line with the contract that he was expecting, with his acrimony again with Cliff Kingsbury. It seems like he's playing his ass off for Jonathan Gannon for right now. I don't think it behooves the Cardinals to do this. They're basically really skiing uphill to try to make a playoff spot. For Kyler Murray, though, I think it's a really encouraging start overall. Again, I would love to see him be more efficient in the passing. That is something that maybe could be the matchup against Atlanta. It's not the easiest one necessarily, but I think the rushing upside alone, we're talking again, 6 rushes, 5 deep throws, 11 combined of those categories. That gives you good upside for Kyler Murray. So I would say in the next few weeks, at least until we know for sure the Cardinals are going to go one way or another, I think you can bank on Kyler Murray and stacks. I think you can go his way. And I think also he's going to give you a pretty good floor. Still not playing naked QBs for the most part in DFS tournaments these days. But I think Kyler is the kind of guy that if the price tag is a fit and the matchup's a fit, I think you can go to him until we know for sure that the Cardinals are going to go another direction, or not another direction from him, but just like, maybe pull him back or maybe not play him the last few weeks just because there was really no point in them going, 8-9 or whatever. So I'd say for Kyler, I think things are looking really good. And I have to say, I'm impressed by it. I don't think I was wrong about the thesis of drafting him in best ball, but I do feel like he's got a lot of upside in DFS. And he's a guy that, again, this is what we're saying with the SPAGS rankings, like, you could bank on him a little bit moving forward for now. He's going to have some ups. He's going to have some downs, I would think. But certainly a player that for what he put on tape in this first game or for what he did numerically in that first game could be a slate breaker in some spots. Shouts to the chat as always. See the chat going live here. Let's see. Oh, wait. Hold on. See, we all know. Did I miss something here? I see the deposit king in the streets. I don't know what that means. Is Pete in here? I don't think so. I think Pete's doing a stream. Kyler Murray, yes, indeed. Shouts to the chat as always. Yeah, Murray QB3. I mean, look, he's going to add value for drafting him in QB3 kind of builds. But I think, the risk point is that come week 17, is he going to be full go against the Philadelphia Eagles team that's just a lot better? I think that's still a pretty big risk point. But again, DFS the next month, I think Kyler Murray very much on the menu. And the hope will be that he does perform a little better. And I should flag really quickly too, just some of his other underlying stats. He did have a 59% completion rate there, which is not good. Obviously, a 72% catchable ball rate, which is not great. For comparison's sake, Patrick Mahomes is at 82% catchable ball rate. Josh Allen, 83%. Dak Prescott, 87%, which is outlandish for Dak, who we'll talk about in a moment. And Kyler Murray, 66% on his actual on-target pass rating. So that's also not that good. So there are some underlying concerns for him as a passer. I don't want to gas you guys up too much about Kyler Murray, but the rushing alone is pretty great. Okay, Matt Murphy, the deposit king. It's like, there's only one deposit king I know in my world, but good to know that Matt Murphy here is the real deposit king. And Cliff is out there. I shouldn't read this. I'm too big time. No, I can't get canceled again by all the lady boys. Shouts to the lady boys out there. Appreciate you supporting Splash Play as always. Josh Allen coming up next on the board. Big potential swing for him coming up. Joe Brady, the new offensive coordinator, as the chat keyed us in on yesterday. Ken Dorsey fired. We'll see how that changes things. Joe Brady is one of those guys that, to me, I really had high hopes for coming into the NFL. And maybe it's because he was, the offensive coordinator for a coach that wasn't that smart with Matt Rule. Maybe he didn't get the upside he could have as a coordinator. Because at LSU, he was the kind of coordinator that I love, where he was getting the ball downfield. Burrow was escaping the pocket, making deep plays, allowed to create a little bit, improvise a little bit. Those are the kind of coaches that allow a lot of upside. So Josh Allen, I don't know that you want him to be improvising that much, given what he showed games like Monday night, where he just frankly left a lot of points on the field. Obviously, not all of that was his fault. Gabe Davis, ball right through his hands. Dalton Kincaid, ball right through his hands. Josh Allen then at one point threw a sideline pass to, I forget, I think it was Sherfield, maybe it was whoever, might have been Hardy, but threw a sideline pass basically that wasn't even to his receiver, just right to the cornerback. It was like a completely awful read. So something's not his fault, something's directly his fault. But I think a lot of bad luck for Josh Allen. So it's possible that the tide rises for him just because of that. But anytime a new offensive coordinator comes in, as we talked about with the play calling changing for a guy like Adam Thielen, obviously different positions that can certainly change across that. But I would say for this spot, it offers new hope. It offers new opportunity. So I do think for Josh Allen, I would continue to bet on him. I still think he's a player that's going to have big upside. And even though he really disappointed in a spot against Denver, where I think that should have been the biggest game he had this year, and I think he left a lot of points on the field that would have made it the biggest game of this year, I think in this spot and moving forward, I would still want to bet on Josh Allen more than not. And I could tell you, going against the Jets coming up this week, I think interesting to play Josh Allen and play him pretty heavy against the pass defense. People might be afraid to play Josh Allen based on what they saw on Monday night. Dak Prescott. We got to talk about Dak here. So the thing with Dak and the thing with this Dallas offense, and I said this past week was going to be a big litmus test, what they did against the Giants, a game where that one was in control. And if we were going to go based off of what we know Mike McCarthy has said publicly in the past, we know what their entire focus this offseason was, which is about controlling the clock, controlling the ball, letting the defense win games, not letting Dak take them out of games with picks. That was something that we would see firsthand versus the Giants, because if they were going to play conservatively in any game, that's when you play conservatively. When you know Tommy DeVito cannot do dick against you, you could just run Tony Pollard 50 times in that game, or Pollard and Dowdle, and run Deuce Vaughn. Honestly, they could have run Deuce Vaughn 30 times in that game, and they could have been completely fine. Instead, what they did is pass aggressively. Dak's dropbacks on the year up to 37.7, his EPA per pass up to 0.12 per pass, 0.14 EPA per dropback. Under pressure, he's at a negative 0.2 EPA, which is better than guys like Mahomes, better than guys like Jalen Hurts. He's been great there. Not throwing it deep quite so much, 3.4 deep throws per game, 3.4 rushes per game. It's the one thing holding him back from a top spot. But Dak has been playing like a new man. I think it's something that can hold up. I think that, again, what they did against the Giants, they're going to be aggressive, I think, the rest of the year. And that is something that should bode really well for Dak in these stacks. So Dak moving up. And frankly, I don't think Dak will move down. I think if Josh Allen struggles at all, we could see Dak potentially pass Josh Allen. It wouldn't shock me. But Dak is a player that, again, I think has been doing a good job and really is beating a lot of things that I thought the Cowboys offense would be doing this past year. Josh Allen burning our poor pocketbooks on Monday. Yeah, he definitely did not come through. He still made the winning lineup, so I guess kudos to him for that one. But yeah, I really thought that was an outlier spot for him. And I think the Denver D, I know this for a fact because I've had one guy who hop into the comments, and not to besmirch this guy because I don't think he was being malicious or anything, but talk about the Broncos D and was like, they haven't given up 20 points in 3 games, and now it's gonna be like, oh, they haven't given up 23 points in the last month and a half. And people really think this Broncos D is actually good. Broncos D is not good. They've just played Kansas City twice. Kansas City, for whatever reason, struggles against the Broncos. They played the Packers, and then they played this Bills team that left about 3 touchdowns, I would say, on the field, maybe 4. So in that spot, I feel like still target the Broncos D because the casuals out there, they're going to think the Broncos D is good now, and they are not good. Nothing has changed there. They just got incredibly lucky, and that's what happens in the variance sometimes week to week, game to game, obviously, but even over the course of a month. I think the Broncos have benefited from a lot of lucky variance their way, and I think that's going to run bad down the home stretch. So Chargers fans, I think especially, should be pretty happy about that one. Justin Herbert, speaking of Chargers fans, another player here who I think the spike weeks make him come up, the bad weeks that he has make him come down. I'm a little more fluid with how that goes. And as I mentioned yesterday, I believe, during the best ball video, Justin Herbert's going to rise when Keenan Allen has the spike weeks. When Keenan Allen doesn't have the spike weeks, we don't see Justin Herbert have the same ceiling, especially with no Mike Williams out there. There just isn't one guy who's going to concentrate that much of the pass game role. And even if Eckler has a good game, he might run one in as well. So for Justin Herbert, I think that he's in a pretty good situation overall. That said, I feel like he's a little more dependent on his targets than a lot of these other QBs above him, where Dak, obviously a lot of his success is rising with CeeDee Lamb, but he's also, like, he gave Brandon Cooks the best game of his last, 2 years, basically. Finally gave Michael Gallup a good game. Jake Ferguson, he's turned into an actual dude. Whereas Justin Herbert, he hasn't turned Gerald Everett into an actual dude. He's turned Donald Parham into Donald Parham, basically. Quentin Johnston's coming along, but I don't think we have another guy who's going to help Justin Herbert hit those heights. He's not going to run enough to give you those heights either. So I think Herbert's appropriately ranked. He honestly could fall down a spot or two week to week, and it wouldn't shock me, but Herbert's doing a good job and looking pretty good. Hey, shout out Gamblestein here. Made it in here for the live one. Baker in my top 10 is still an abomination. Need to call a priest to exercise him. Baker's been doing a good job, and I think what these stacks also reflect, or what these rankings rather actually reflect, is about the stacks themselves. I'm like, Baker's creating value, and we'll talk about Baker in a moment here, but I think that it's really more about these guys performing well, performing with expectation, creating more points every drive. That creates value for themselves, obviously, as fantasy players, but also creates value for the stack. And what have you seen hit recently? You've seen Mike Evans hit. You've seen Godwin hit within the last few weeks. You've seen these guys. You've seen Kate Otten hit. That's what this ranking kind of represents. It's like Baker does a good enough job that he's going to allow for spike weeks for these guys. And I think that's where the top 10 of every position should point you towards, is like, these are guys you can trust in any spot. These are guys you can go to in any spot because they're playing so well and because they have so much opportunity that they can do that. So it's not about the individual guys. It's about kind of what they're doing, how they're performing, and then what the role is combined. Lamar Jackson. So Lamar's got to come down for me. But that doesn't matter. Like, Baker does hit. Like, Baker could score over, I think he scored over 20 this past week. And then if you have him with Mike Evans, like, the stack can still work. Obviously, it's going to be different to different GPPs, but I think, like, you got to take the names off of it at a certain point. And Baker, I think, is really more because the offensive coordinator, as we talked about, Hunky Dave Canales down in Tampa Bay. He's driven Baker to, I think, some of the best success he's had this year. And it's not on Baker. It's just that this offense flows. So it's more about the stacking really than anything. Like, you could take an independent Evans, but if Evans and Godwin hit together in 1 week, you know who's going to come with them? Baker Mayfield. Like, that's just how it goes. And that's how you land on that duo. So it's about cutting the parlay with a lot of these QBs. And I don't know. That's how I view it, at least. Lamar Jackson, though, let's talk about him. I'm not going to fixate on Baker too much. 34 dropbacks per game for Lamar. So that's not good. He is coming down in terms of his dropbacks per game. Not a great sign for him in terms of the opportunity. He's also getting less efficient as we go. Negative 0.06 EPA per pass. Negative 0.03 EPA per dropback. So with Lamar, his improvisational skills, his ability to run, that is a flaw in Lamar right now, that he's not playing up to snuff relative to what he looked like for the last month. Obviously, the defense, the rushing game can score from anywhere on the field. So that's also not helping things too much because you just don't have to press Lamar into action quite as much. His rushing attempts coming down a little bit too, 9.2 rush attempts per game. He's closer to Jalen Hurts, both these guys cresting towards 10. Lamar getting closer to 9, 8 would be a bad sign for him. He's also throwing it deep only 3.1 times per game with only a very mediocre 0.13 EPA per pass of 20 plus air yards. So that's something as well for Lamar, where it's just not good. Like, frankly, if you're throwing it downfield, those are higher upside passes, higher analytically sound passes that should add more points. So for Lamar to be converting those that poorly, I think is not a great sign. He's also only got a 32% completion rate on deep throws. So that's not great. Lamar is showing some bad signs here. The rushing upside still there every week, so I have no issue with him. But I do think that he could be a lot better player. It's just that the Baltimore is doing Baltimore things again. Does Greg Roman gone? Doesn't matter. They're still leaning on the stuff that is not Lamar's hands, and I think that's pretty tough. Let's see. Again, I take opinion out. This is just data. Like, I'm not like, these are, it's a SPAGS rankings because it's my data point, but I like Spurious News gets it. If you follow the videos, you know, like I created a data point based off a lot of things I look at rolled into one. I'm not caping for Baker Mayfield by any stretch, but I am caping for the numbers because like, if you followed the SPAGS rankings closely and you just played guys matchup agnostic throughout the year, you'd be finding a lot better plays throughout the course of a year because these guys have opportunity and over again. You got to take personal bias out of it. And I think, again, that's the hardest part of people do in fantasy football. We just talked enough about Baker. I'm not going to waste any more breath on that. Tua Tagovailoa. Again, the poor rushing is the main thing here. He's a 0.14 EPA per pass guy, 0.08 EPA per drop back guy. 3.6 deep throws per game for Tua. Would like to see more there. The 2.6 rushes per game, though, low volume. He's also a negative 1.1 EPA per rush guy. I know I've mentioned this a lot, but obviously new people watch every week. Tua Tagovailoa, basically every time he runs the ball, he's taking a point away from the Dolphins. And honestly, you can make the case like EPA metrics aren't team weighted in any way. You can make the case he's probably hurting the team even more when he runs because he's not passing it to Tyreek. He's not passing it to Waddle. He's not giving a run to Achane or Mostert or even a check down to Jeff Wilson. So he's basically taking the least efficient plays every time he runs. That's not a great sign. Maybe if he ran more, it would get better, but Tua's never been a good runner. So that's the biggest flaw in his game in terms of what we're looking for fantasy-wise. But again, the EPA metrics in terms of his dropbacks, in terms of his passes, Tua Tagovailoa in that front is going to look really good every single time we pull him up into these rankings. And closing out the top 10 is going to be Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's numbers, again, just crazy. The issue is that I really thought coming out of the bye that he would be dropping back more, passing more, giving more opportunity. I think that's something with Brock Purdy where I really do feel like he would be better if he were dropping back 40 times a game. Like, I know that the Niners don't want to play that way, especially with how hot the defense ran. They made some changes, obviously, in the bye, made some trades as well, bringing in guys like Chase Young. That is something that's going to help that defense out. So I think my concern for Brock Purdy moving forward is that they're not going to allow him to play a little more wide open, which is how I think they need to play just to be more aggressive in this offense. They still want to win it with their defense. So that's going to be tough for Brock if his dropbacks just keep coming down. If he's under 30 dropbacks a game, he's then going to have basically 10, 11, 12 less dropbacks than other QBs. That's such a high amount of points that you're not going to get fantasy-wise. But because he's so efficient, again, 0.24 EPA per dropback, I can't articulate enough to you, like, how insane that is. Like, he's basically, Patrick Mahomes is 0.11 EPA per dropback. So he's adding double the amount of value as Patrick Mahomes per dropback. Dak's at 0.14. He's been a world beater. He's almost double like Dak, what he's doing per dropback. So I really wish they would kind of just let Brock Purdy do more. Let Brock cook is what I would say. But just increase the volume. Like, that's really the main thing for Brock Purdy that's lacking. So kudos to Brock Purdy, but 2.6 deep throws per game and also 2.9 rushes per game. For him to be ranked in the top 10 with that low of those numbers where he's not doing the things that fantasy-wise add the most easy value, I would say for Brock, it's really a testament to how great he's been. And I know people love CJ Stroud and all that. I know people don't want to really say Brock Purdy is a guy that you consider for MVP. But if the Niners were like a world-beating team, you can kind of make the case with how efficient that Brock has been. Maybe he would be an MVP because he's the engine that's making it all run, and he's running it about as efficiently as any QB possibly can. So I'm not a big Brock Purdy guy, but I do think it does make a lot of sense. Poor gamble sign. Maybe it's better I'm not live. Like, I appreciate the pushback. It's just ultimately you just gotta, accept the data for what it is. But I get it. Like, I get it. That's what I like about the rankings, though, to be honest. Like, I don't think Baker should be in the top 10, but if I think it through, it's like it makes sense. Like, Baker, again, 0.01 EPA per pass, 0.03 EPA per dropback. He runs 4.2 times per game, throws deep 4.3 times per game. So, like, it makes sense why Baker's there. He's just like, he's not a guy that we've done well with historically. I get it, but you gotta kind of accept guys for the roles they have. Guys just outside the top 10, injured Kirk Cousins, so that doesn't matter. Jordan Love still hanging in here, actually getting closer to average in a lot of things. So I would say for Jordan Love, a guy to watch down the home stretch. We've talked about Christian Watson a lot here, of course, as one of the biggest Christian Watson bag holders, though from some of you guys in the comments who have like 50% Christian Watson, maybe not as much as you. But I think for like the Packers, I think there are signs of hope. And I mentioned it earlier, I think yesterday as well. I think Jordan Love really passed the eye test against the Steelers in a way that I haven't felt he has in about, I guess, honestly, since week one. So for Jordan Love, 4.8 deep throws per game, 3.4 rushes per game. think there's opportunity for Jordan Love moving forward. And I can tell you, I'll sneak in some Packer stacks moving forward, depending on the matchup. But Jordan Love, have to highlight him as number 11, basically, of all the healthy guys. Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, Josh Dobbs, CJ Stroud. So these guys were all on the cusp. I don't know how they hop in. Stroud, though, we will highlight quickly because he's obviously a guy people want to hear about. 0.09 EPA per pass, 0.08 EPA per dropback. Throwing it deep more and more each week, now up to 3.3 deep throws per game. And as we've mentioned before with CJ Stroud, he's the best deep ball thrower in the league, and it's not even close. He has a 1.3 EPA per deep throw, which is higher than pretty much everybody. The only guy who's coming close is Brock Purdy with 1.1. So I do think for CJ Stroud, I really feel like he is a guy that I would like to see him higher in the rankings personally, but again, it's not like I just put the numbers together, and I think the numbers represent what they represent. But Stroud, to me, a guy that I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a surge upward if he keeps playing with this way, and obviously the pass rate stays where it is moving forward. Stroud got a lock on Rookie of the Year. I think so, yeah. With no AR, like I think the AR Stroud race would have ended up being pretty fun. I think Stroud, honestly, if Stroud kept playing like he did and AR played like he did, but the Colts were a 500 team, I think Stroud would still win, but AR would probably have a few highlight plays. I don't know. This is now a parallel universe I probably don't even want to go down the road of. But yeah, Stroud, to me, very strong player, and obviously a guy that I think he's minus money now for Rookie of the Year. So yeah, I would say he's a lock. I still wouldn't place the bet because it's minus money, but he's probably a lock at this point, barring injury. That covers QB pretty well. Other guys, I guess maybe I could highlight that are noteworthy. Burrow is behind Stroud, so that's there. Maybe too low. Deshaun out for the year. He's actually still pretty low for me too. So nobody too noteworthy. Will Levis actually surging a little bit upward relative to Will Levis. But obviously that's mostly based on him throwing deep. He's still at 7.3 deep throws per game. He's still running it 2.7 times per game. So not that much. Will Levis is going to have a big day at some point throwing it deep. It just obviously wasn't this past week, unfortunately, against Tampa Bay. Let's keep it moving here. I forgot to turn the fan on, so I am dying. It is hot in the studio, and I'm still fucking sick. Why wouldn't I? Why would I do anything that's going to help me out in here? Let's talk about running backs. Christian McCaffrey, of course, there. Up top, as always. McCaffrey, honestly, I have to give him credit. As you guys know, like I'm not the biggest running back guy in the world. I think you can find fantasy similar production from late round picks as you're going to get early. You're as likely to hit on a bust early as you are a guy who is great like McCaffrey. But McCaffrey is just getting better week to week. A 16% avoided tackle rate is not that high. For a guy who's running it 18 times a game like McCaffrey is, or 17 times a game, that's a really good tackle rate for a guy who's also a little bit older, has some miles on the tires for sure. McCaffrey also, again, 5.4 red zone touches a game. He's great. Like, it's hard to argue him. Is he going to be the guy that wins everything for you? If he puts up 40, yes. If he puts up 20, you're probably fucked. That's just sort of how that goes, unless you have spike weeks from other positions. But McCaffrey, I think, looking really good moving forward. Obviously, a guy you can go to every week. And in some weeks where the chalk running backs seem like dog shit, just play McCaffrey and get different. I think that's a good way to do that and actually guarantee yourself some floor, some ceiling, and all that. Number 2, running back David Montgomery. Very concerned about David Montgomery coming into this week in terms of what he would get. Obviously, I think we saw some bad signs of that with Gibbs getting some early work, getting the red zone work. It is now a 50-50 timeshare in the red zone for these guys with Montgomery and Gibbs. But we still saw Montgomery had a lot of juice there, broke the long run, stayed in bounds in that one play by the skin of his teeth. He looks good. The red zone work is still good. 5.2 red zone rushes per game, 3 inside the 10-yard line per game. David Montgomery's role in a great offense is great. I think he's a fitting number 2. I think you could find spike weeks from these other guys on the list. Would you rather have Montgomery or Saquon? Would you rather have Montgomery or Pollard? I think I'd rather have Montgomery. So I think he's a comfortable number 2 for me because of the touchdown equity. PPR points going to be a little more elusive with Jahmyr Gibbs out there, but still Montgomery, I think a strong number 2 on the year. Number 3, Alvin Kamara. I am sweating. I actually might have to get up. You know what? Fuck it, guys. Let's pause. Let's still, you know what? We have this graphic still here. I know you guys loved it when I did the marathon. I'm turning on the fan. I'm fucking dying in here. Spags will return. Oh, I'm even wearing the same shirt. That works well. Wait a sec. I'll just keep rambling over here. Hey, here I am walking, turning on the fan. I get so hot in here. I'm creating so much heat with all this great content. All right, Spags is returned momentarily, as promised. Here we go. All right. That graphic. Draw your animated dicks if you want. Putting it into my mouth there if you need to. Whatever brings you joy. Number 3, Alvin Kamara. Taysom Hill is killing Kamara right now. Jameis Winston is also going to kill Kamara if this is the case moving forward. Jameis is not going to check down like Derek Carr will. Jameis is going to throw it up. Jameis is going to throw picks. Those are not great things for Kamara. What would be great for Kamara is if Jameis gets some long passes that end up going to the 1-yard line. And even then, there is still some risk that Taysom Hill could be a guy that steals some touches away. Kamara, I think, is a very fluid number 3. Kyron Williams, when he comes back, I think could pass Kamara. He's not in the rankings, but he would be number 4 right now. Jacobs, with his usage, could pass Kamara. There's a lot of ways that can go for Kamara, but the work is coming down, which is my biggest concern. He's still at 8 targets per game, still at 14.9 rushes per game. But there was a point where he was averaging 27 touches a game. We are now down to 22.9. That's going the wrong direction. I think he gets under 20 by the end of the year. So Kamara, I would say I would watch him keep coming down. For right now, though, 22.9 touches a game, the role he has, and he's not that inefficient either. Flat 0 EPA per rush, 0.04 EPA per pass. He's the kind of guy that I think can actually he's better than I would have thought this year, but they're just not using him as well as they were earlier in the season. Checking the comments real fast. Spags even go anywhere? It's true. You guys got to see me with my invisible sandwich, and then you didn't even miss me. That's all that matters. Number 4 on the list, Kyron Williams, as we mentioned. So I said took him out because he's not back until week 12. Josh Jacobs, though, we'll talk about real fast. He's not the Josh Jacobs of last year. I think that's the main thing we have to kind of take from Josh Jacobs. I'm still a fine player, still getting 23.2 intended touches per game. That's good work. He's also getting 3.6 red zone rushes, 2.2 inside the 10-yard line, 0.6 red zone targets, 0.3 inside the 10-yard line. He's getting the work that you need to have upside. So Josh Jacobs, I think, is doing a good job, but he's still a player that just the juice isn't there quite as much. 13% avoided tackle rate. Last year, he was at 32%. So Josh Jacobs, not as shaky, not doing as much with the opportunities. The Raiders offense overall, not as good. So Jacobs, I think he's fine. I'd probably rather have Eckler. I'd probably rather have Achane. I'd probably rather have all the guys above him too. I think Jacobs is an okay player, but I just don't know that he's got 30, 40 fantasy point ceilings that you really want to see down the home stretch. But he's a perfectly okay player. I'd plug him in every week and not feel that bad about it. Austin Eckler a lot less efficient than he was, I think, both last year and earlier in the year. Negative 0.12 EPA per rush, negative 0.01 EPA per pass, which is okay for a running back. He's not avoiding tackles too well, 9% avoided tackle rate. But he is getting the red zone work, 3.2 red zone rushes per game, 2.8 of which are inside the 10-yard line, 0.8 red zone targets per game. That's where Eckler is going to add a lot of value. He can give you the touchdowns pretty easily in the games that the Chargers are running hot on. But I think he's missing something this year. Like I don't know, eye test wise, he still looks like Eckler, but I think the volume not being as high, the pass game involvement not being quite as high with only 5.8 targets per game, 3.7 of which he's catching, which feels like it should be a higher catch rate for a guy who was getting a low ADOT for the most part, negative 1 ADOT for Eckler on the year. He's not the same guy as last year as well, but he's doing well enough for what it is. When the Chargers have good games or the Chargers have bad games, really, you can see Eckler have upside. So I still like him, but I think that in the spot, he's just not the same dude, and that's always a little bit hard for me. When the guy's not as good as he was last year, I kind of downgrade them a little more than I probably should. Devon Achane back this week, and I'm glad I could talk about it again because we know with Achane, he was a monster when he was playing, and the numbers bear that out. 0.5 EPA per rush, 0.09 EPA per pass. When he's doing anything, he's got a lot of juice. 24% avoided tackle rate. So again, that would be the highest of anybody on this top 10. Next closest is Kenneth Walker at 21%. So Achane is showing the shakiness that you want to see, the wiggle that you want to see. 3.3 red zone rushes per game, 1.8 of which are inside the 10-yard line. And he's also getting 1 red zone target per game, which is also normally inside the 10-yard line. So Achane's goal line work, you got to assume that's going to be there. It feels like the Dolphins offense has kind of missed him in the month that he's been gone. So I'm excited to see Achane back out there. He's at number 6, and I hope he comes up more. But the volume probably won't get there enough to be an actual top 3 back relative to my rankings. He's only getting 12.3 intended touches per game. That does include the early run as well, where he's not getting much work. Tony Pollard makes the list. And I know people don't want to see Tony Pollard here, but I think going against Carolina this week, I would still be willing to play him again. He is still at 4.1 red zone rushes per game, 2.3 of which inside the 10-yard line. He's honestly not that less efficient than he was last year. He's got a negative 0.13 EPA per rush, which is basically where he was last year, 0.01 EPA per pass, so actually adding value, and he's getting a pass. I think Tony Pollard's okay. It's just that the Cowboys offense has found a much more efficient player, a much better player in CeeDee Lamb, who you're going to be excited to see coming up in a moment at wide receiver. For Tony Pollard, though, I think he's okay. Like, I think I wouldn't change the way you're playing him. I think the run good for him can come at some point. He's not avoiding tackles. Like, he's at an 8% avoided tackle rate, which is basically Joe Mixon territory. And actually Mixon is ahead of him. Mixon's at 9.5. So that's not great for Tony Pollard. But I do think that the overall role is still good and the Dallas offense is running well. All it takes is just the luck stuff that we talked about earlier with that Broncos D. Where, like, what if CeeDee Lamb doesn't catch a ball in the end zone? What if he catches it on the 1 yard line and gets tackled? That's probably where Tony Pollard does make his nuts. That's where he makes his nut. That's where he gets there. So for Tony Pollard, I think we're in a good situation still, even though it doesn't feel like it. Obviously, if you have been invested in him heavily, I don't know, there's a breakout game coming, but if it doesn't come this week against Carolina, it's probably not going to come. But still, week to week, like, I would still play him in DFS in some amount because there is going to be a week where he has a good game just because, again, he's putting it out there every single week. Shout out Gamblestein here, becoming a member. We don't agree on Baker Mayfield, but we do agree that you've been welcome to the family, Gamblestein. You could come spend your fine dollars here on Splash Play anytime you want. And now I have to update the credits as well to thank you for being a member. But welcome, join the Squirt Squad. Hit that join button down below. And you too could be one of my favorite avatars on YouTube is Gamblestein's here with the Kool-Aid Man. Welcome to the family, Kool-Aid Man. I just want to put my head in there and go blah, 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 blah. And drink up your delicious flesh. There we go. Shout out Gamblestein. Saquon Barkley. There we go. Look what I've become. Wow. Okay, it's a big moment here on Splash Play. First time a paid subscriber to anything. I appreciate it. Look, honestly, all the money that you guys, if you pay for a membership here, obviously you get the custom emoji. You get to be featured in the credits. You get my data sheet on Saturdays, but you really do help me put on the show. Like, I would love to have 1,000 paid subs on here because then I could just focus more time on this. This and probably are the two things that I do. So I really do appreciate the support here. And thank you for doing it. Also, for anybody who misses SPAGS NBA content, I'm going to be on the deeper dive later today on Stochastic with Adam Shearer. So ship my money. I haven't done a show with it in a while. So if you want some NBA content, check that out later today on Stochastic. Saquon coming up next. Saquon, I think it's fitting that he and Tony Pollard are tied. Saquon, the least efficient running back who's ever existed in football, negative 0.2 EPA per rush, negative 0.32 EPA per pass. The volume is what's keeping him on this list, 24.4 intended touches per game. I think Saquon is dog shit. I don't think he's a good player. He doesn't have any juice either. 13% avoided tackle rate, a little better when catching a pass, 22% avoided tackle rate there. But it's just the role. It's just the opportunity. The issue is that, like, he's getting 3.9 red zone rushes per game right now. Are the Giants even going to get in the red zone like that many times moving forward? I don't know. So that's the risk point for Saquon. He needs Tyrod Taylor back in to have a little more upside. For Tommy DeVito being out there, it's not going to go well for Saquon, but the role is there. So I think he has to stay on the rankings. I'm not gonna fuck with the numbers. The numbers are what the numbers are until the season's over. I think for Saquon, the role is still really good. It's just a matter of, can the Giants ever move the ball enough to get him to where he needs to go? Because he basically needs to be gifted touchdowns for him to actually have upside because he's just not efficient anymore. Oh, that's tough. That's tough. Kenneth Walker coming up next. TD hunting basically has been his job for the most part. 3.8 red zone rushes per game, 2.1 of which are inside the 10-yard line. He's also getting less efficient as we go, which I think is why we're seeing more Zach Charbonnet. Negative 0.04 EPA per rush for Kenneth Walker. As we talked about, his big flaw last year was that he was hitting these home run plays, but then he was also getting tackled 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage a lot. Dances too much back there. That's something that's rearing its ugly head again. And that is the risk point for Walker, is that Charbonnet is a more competent overall football player. He blocks really well. He runs with malice. You guys know me, and I've talked about this before. Like, I just love running backs that run like Chris Ivory. Like, I don't know why that's the one guy that always sticks out to me, but guys that, like, embrace the contact, go seek it out and get after it. And Charbonnet is that dude. Whereas Kenneth Walker is just like, like, I'm just wiggling my way around back here. And that's working out for him. But at a certain point, like, Charbonnet might take more of a role. I don't think he's going to get the red zone role, which is ironic given the fact that, like, Charbonnet's running style, you would think would bode well for red zone touches. Maybe that's an issue for next year. For right now, it doesn't seem to be the case. So Kenneth Walker, I think, as long as he gets touchdowns, is going to get you there. But throughout the course of a game, like, Charbonnet is going to fit in a lot more situations, a lot different personnel packages. That's where Charbonnet has a lot more utility. So I just fucking love Charbonnet, man. Like, you watch him run. There was one hit that he had this week where he was going out of bounds, and he's like, I'm not going to go out of bounds. I'm just going to try to smash this guy and Mack truck him. And things like that bring me a lot of joy. You might not seem like it, but I love splash plays. Obviously, that's why the name of the show. But I just like guys that just go after it, man. And that's Charbonnet, and Walker does his thing. DeAndre Swift rounds out the top 10. Swift, obviously good offense. I do have to point out, though, Swift always been a guy that we've thought of as kind of shifty, like LaShawn McCoy-esque kind of player. 9.6% avoided tackle rate for him. So he's basically also Joe Mixon, which is not the same as he's been in the past. Been a little better in the past game, 3.9 targets per game for DeAndre Swift with a 20% avoided tackle rate. But I don't think he's like the same running back as he's been in the past. I think the Philly O-line's been doing a lot of the legwork for him. So for DeAndre Swift, I think he's a good player. I think he's in a good situation, but he's one of the guys in the top 10 here. I would take him over Saquon 99 times out of 100. But I think for DeAndre Swift, he's not really as good as I think people think he is, but he's doing okay relative to this Philly offense. Guys, yeah, Swift is not that guy, but he gets points as spurious news here. I agree with that one. And Pollard doesn't look right. I mean, Pollard looked like this at the end of last year. I think people really got rose-colored glasses with how Pollard played last year because he was so good to start the year, and also because you drafted him so much more lowly. But I think that's like the biggest issue I have. And remind me of this when we get to best ball season again next year. But like people really like focus on these things where it's like, I got this guy at 100 and he was crushing last year. So yeah, I should take him at 20, 15, 10 this year. And it's like, no, like they just become different plays then. And Pollard, I think, was the same player last year. Like he was really good to start the year, really efficient, got a lot of work, obviously relative to the backup role behind Zeke. But then he also like kind of fell down. I know that because I had Pollard everywhere. He was one of the biggest successes I had last year. So and I want to say like, oh, you didn't watch the games last year and you're watching like whatever. But I think like he's basically the same player. It's just a less good run offense, I think. But also it's just that, he's just not getting the same results, and it's a result-based business. So that's the tough part, but the workload's still there for Pollard. So what are you going to do? Guys, just outside the top 10, Joe Mixon, inefficient, but the volume is great for him with 19.1 touches per game. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think Jahmyr Gibbs could definitely make a surge upwards. I would love if he could pass Saquon. Gibbs on the year, 26% avoided tackle rate, lots of juice, 23% avoided tackle rate in the pass game. Gibbs also up to is this right? He's up to 5.6 targets per game. Gibbs is a player that I think is on the upswing. And frankly, he's a guy that I think you should have in tournaments pretty frequently, and unless the price tag gets really onerous. But Gibbs, to me, a very strong play, and a guy that I think is the 50-50 red zone work split with Montgomery is really great news for Gibbs, where he's going to have a little bit more of a floor, a little more opportunity to get at least one touchdown a week. And with what he could do with breaking big plays with that shiftiness, he's something to watch too. You got just like a different back than a guy like Zach Charbonnet, but like these are the kind of backs I like. You have to be really shifty, or you have to like be a bulldozer. And I think Gibbs is definitely a lot more of the shifty type. Obviously, Rashad White just behind Gibbs, Travis Etienne also behind White, and then Derrick Henry closes out the top 15 there with Jonathan Taylor coming for Derrick Henry. And it would not shock me if Jonathan Taylor makes a surge upwards soon. Let's talk about the wide receivers coming up next. Making good time on this video today, right? No, I'm not. Never mind. I thought I was. I was really feeling like I was making good time. Felt like I was making salient points and doing it quickly, and I was incorrect. But guys, good news. You know what you can do? You can subscribe down below here because Splash Play marches on every single Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. I'm showing up here. I'm making graphics. I'm doing shit. So please come hang out here, of course. You can tell by my narratives here. I do all the data work. I do everything I can to bring you guys good, well-informed takes, and you can disagree or not. I'm just going to tell you what I see, and we can work off of that. But subscribe down below, Splash Play. We're perpetually on the march to 3K subs, and one day we're going to fucking get there. I don't mean to turn that off. Please do subscribe down below. And I appreciate it a lot. Really and truly help me grow this channel, please, for the love of God, because I love doing this and I want to do it for as many people as we possibly can who are not going to be annoying. Otherwise I have to be mean to them. Tyreek Hill, number 1 on the list again. Tyreek, best opportunity overall. Again, 2.1 deep targets per game, and nothing has changed within the last week. So if you watched the SPAGS rankings last week, you know the deal with Tyreek. 2.1 deep targets per game, though, is great, and the fact that he's got 1.5 EPA on those deep targets is just outlandish. He's also got 1.4 red zone targets per game, one of which are inside the 10-yard line. That's good for him. He's also got 11 targets or 11 intended touches per game overall, which does include the occasional rush. So Tyreek, great. 0.4 EPA is a great number that would have made him the best wide receiver at volume last year. So we'll see if that can hold up down the home stretch. But he's looking really good. The guy we really need to talk about, though, is at number 2. CeeDee Lamb is on the hottest streak of a wide receiver. I don't know, that maybe at least in the last 5 years. Somebody might think of another one that I might be incorrect about. But this last month for CeeDee Lamb is outrageous, and watching him move up the rankings week to week to week is really impressive to see. CeeDee Lamb earning targets outside more. He's now up to a 0.58 EPA per target, which is crazy with the amount of work he's getting. He's also finally up over 10 intended touches per game. So that is the mark that we really wanted to see for him, where he's going to have more of a floor. He's going to have more of a ceiling, especially for full point PPR. Like, CeeDee Lamb, I don't think should yet be priced in the 9K range, but I think if he's priced there, he's still a guy that can give you enough points to pay that off. So CeeDee Lamb to me is an every week play as long as he's not too chalky. The Dallas offense, I got to say, like, I think I was right to start the year. To their credit, they have pivoted completely and now allowed CeeDee Lamb to go out there, make plays in a major way that honestly, even Kellen Moore wasn't allowing him to do. So for CeeDee Lamb, the biggest risk point is that they can feed other guys. Dak is starting to get a little more target agnostic, where we saw Brandon Cooks finally have a good game. Michael Gallup had a good game relative to Michael Gallup standards. Jake Ferguson keeps getting there. But CeeDee Lamb is the alpha target earner, and he has been an alpha target earner in every possible way. So I guess the one critique you could give him is for Tyreek. Tyreek is playing 44 snaps per game. They try to give him a touch a quarter of the time that he's getting a snap. For CeeDee Lamb, they try to give him a touch 19% of the time. So, like, that's the one league nickel and dime, is that he's not getting that Tyreek level usage. But he's been great. So for CeeDee Lamb, you have to be really happy. 1.4 red zone targets a game too. He's actually getting 0.2 red zone rushes per game as well. And then on deep throws, plus 1.04 EPA on deep throws too. So of course, throws to 20 plus air yards, and he's getting 1.6 of those a game. He's doing everything. So CeeDee Lamb, big surge upwards. The battle between Tyreek, CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown moving forward, I think it's going to be an interesting one to watch. But really, I would say any of these top 6 guys, I think all of them, if you bring one of them into week 17, if you bring 2 of them into week 17, you are going to be feeling really good about your opportunity, because the roles are so elite. And any of these top 6 guys, unfortunately, we'll see what Diggs does with Joe Brady, but any of the top 6 can put up 40 fantasy points in a week. And I think that's really exciting to have those guys in your portfolio. Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen passed AJ Brown this week. Got another big spike week for Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen has a shoulder injury. So I think for Keenan Allen, that is the kind of play that we'll see what happens moving forward with him. Okay, this is, I think, Gamelstein, I love you, bud, but you're missing the forest from the trees. So Keenan Allen, though, the main thing with Keenan Allen is going to be that he's really efficient with what he's doing. 0.52 EPA per target, 11 targets per game. The shoulder injury that he had in that game, we'll see how that affects him. Seems like he probably got a little Toradol shot, came back out there. Could be an issue moving forward. Keenan Allen, a history of soft tissue injuries, so anything you see that does creep up on him could not be the best thing. That said, he's the only weapon that Justin Herbert really has to trust. Quentin Johnson is not there yet. Gerald Everett, they're not using. Austin Eckler is not as efficient as he has been, as we talked about earlier. So Keenan Allen, I think, definitely a good guy, but we've seen the downside too. You have to remember, we saw the huge week this past week, games where the Chargers didn't have to put up that many points to keep up with their opponent. We see a lot more down games. You're seeing more of 15 to 20 point games. So for Keenan Allen, I think still a big play. But overall, I think that I don't trust him week to week as much as I would at this point. Tyreek, CD, AJ Brown, Jefferson, Chase. I think that's the one difference point for me between Keenan Allen and these other guys. Fair enough. AJ Brown at number 4, again, had a bye week last week. He and Tyreek, also another guy getting 2.1 deep targets per game. AJ Brown's been great. We also know if you play against a team that's got a lot of man defense, AJ Brown's going to crush there as well. So keep that in mind if that's a metric that you follow. And of course, I'll try to flag that whenever we talk about it here on Splash Play on Fridays. For AJ Brown, though, he's been great. 0.55 EPA per target, 10 targets a game, 10.1 per game if we want to be accurate. So AJ Brown, 1 red zone target, 0.4 of which inside the 10-yard line. I think AJ Brown's a really good player. I think there's nothing to really critique about him. He only fell behind CeeDee Lamb and Keenan Allen because these guys went ape shit last week and AJ Brown didn't play. But AJ Brown, the ceiling's there. We also know Dallas Goedert's going to be out likely 3 more weeks, and that should open up more targets for both Devontae Smith as well as more opportunity for AJ Brown. So I think we're in a good situation for him as well. He's another guy. Again, this top 6, any of them, you could have them and be happy with it. But right now, a few of them are obviously running more hot than others. Justin Jefferson seems like he's trending towards coming back this week. We will see. He's at 0.27 EPA per target, 10.8 intended targets per game on the year. How is his return going to affect the whole target share? We did not see Josh Dobbs feed outside receivers as well in Arizona. He really relied on feeding tight ends. That is something that could be an issue point for them. But Justin Jefferson runs a lot out of the slot, so I kind of think you can one-to-one those targets a little bit, and we'll see him shave some of that Hockenson usage away. But Jefferson showing up week 1 would be awesome. I agree. I think Jefferson's in a good situation. I'm a little bit reluctant to like plant the flag fully for him as how it relates to Josh Dobbs, just because I don't think Dobbs has the greatest deep ball arm in the world. A lot of what he does is creating opportunities on these bootlegs, getting outside the pocket, making things happen, and also like threatening with the run so guys get open. That's where Jefferson, I think, can really make some big plays. But we'll see, because like I think that if they give some of those Hockenson, scramble, let's get out there and see what you can do, the backyard football kind of plays, if those go Jefferson's way instead of Hockenson, that's going to hurt Hockenson, but it's going to create really big upside for Jefferson. So I think that's good. But traditional pocket passes like Kirk was throwing Justin Jefferson, those are going to be a little bit harder to hit for him. So we'll see. I kind of expect Jefferson's volume to come down a little, but I think he might end up a little bit more efficient with Dobbs at QB. So curious to see how it goes moving forward. And Jefferson, obviously Dobbs is hot streak. Jefferson seems motivated to get back out there and play. And Jefferson's still playing for his next contract. So something to keep in mind that could be a risk point with the injury, but also he might want to put up a few big games on the home stretch to really cement that he's probably going to be the highest paid receiver heading into next year. Jamar Chase, 0.37 EPA per target, so doing well there. 11.3 intended touches per game. That does include the occasional rush. 1.7 red zone targets per game, 0.8 of which are inside the 10-yard line. He's not getting as many deep throws as these other guys, so that's probably what keeps him firmly at number 6. 1.3 deep targets per game would put him the least out of all the top 6. But Chase, we know the upside's there. We know he's a great player. I think the main thing for him is that I kind of think that Higgins being in and Higgins being a little more motivated, obviously, and looking more motivated, I think the last time that he played, should pull some targets away from Chase, should pull some upside away from Chase. Did I fuck this up? Yep, you're right. I fucked it up. Well, I'll pair it out. Doing the graphics for the show, guys, is a hustle, but Diggs is so bad that I had to put him in 2 spots. But yes, Jamar Chase to close it out. He's a fine player. I think he's a tier behind these other guys. But again, if you have him and if you have the other 5, any of them could win you a tournament, whether it be DFS-wise or best ball-wise. But that's a little bit tough. Amon-Ra St. Brown is actually the guy who should be up next year. Amon-Ra's ADOT's coming up, 7.7 intended air yards per target. It actually took a 1-yard leap last week. So he got targeted more downfield than he probably has ever been. So I think for Amon-Ra, we know the thing there. He's a part of Detroit's offense. Detroit does want to run the ball in the red zone more. That kind of caps Amon-Ra's upside compared to some of these other guys. But in full point PPR especially, Amon-Ra has the same ceiling as the top 6. So that's the main thing for Amon-Ra, but only 1.1 red zone targets a game, which doesn't sound like a big difference compared to like 1.4 for Tyreek Hill, but it actually does matter. Like that can matter quite a bit over the course of a year. Also for Amon-Ra, still a great player, but I think he's the tier break that I did incorrectly when doing the graphic. Puka Nacua would be up next. So that is still correct in terms of the on-screen stuff. Puka 0.37 EPA per target. The red zone work is the worst out of all the top 10 guys. 0.6 red zone targets per game, 0.2 of which inside the 5-yard or inside the 10-yard line. And he hasn't converted any of those into a touchdown. You need Stafford to be back out there for Puka, but in this situation with Puka, I think that he's probably the guy most likely to drop off here. We've been waiting for Adam Thielen to fall out. Thielen finally did. I think Puka's the next one to fall out of this group. He's just not cut from the same cloth as these guys. The only way he can get there, I think, is Carson Wentz being good enough to at least give Stafford level production. And you probably also need to see Cooper Kupp go out, I think, for him to really have the upside that we saw earlier in the year. But I think you still feel good about Puka relative to the ADP, obviously, but it's still pretty tough. Let's see. We got Stephon Diggs. This is where Stephon. Oh, fuck. So this means because I put Diggs in twice, Adam Thielen does technically make the top 10. Diggs, again, we'll see what happens with Joe Brady. Diggs has been less efficient this year, though, as I've pointed out before. 0.24 EPA per target is down about 0.1 from last year. So not quite as good in terms of those metrics. Still getting 10.2 targets per game. So that's a good workload. Diggs, I think, is the guy most likely to benefit from this Brady situation, because if you're an offensive coordinator coming in, I think the first thing you do might be look at Gabe Davis's route tree and try to use him more like he was used a couple weeks ago. The second thing you might do is just really just feed Diggs to hope that you keep your star player happy, you keep the entire offense going the right way. I think that's an important part of what he's going to try to establish right away. So Diggs could move upward. I do hope he does, because I'm a big Diggs believer. The Bills kind of feeling like a snake bitten year this year, so we'll see how it goes. I think it's one of those spots with Joe Brady where it could go either way. I think it's going to go the positive way, but your mileage may vary. And then unfortunately, because I put Diggs in twice, we get Adam Thielen here. Adam Thielen at number 10 is not on the screen. 0.4 EPA per target. He's going the wrong way. He's coming down there. He's also down to 9.7 targets per game. He's not getting a lot of red zone work, though he is getting 1.2 red zone targets per game, so that's okay. 0.3 deep targets per game is not that great. Thielen's role, it just feels like Thomas Brown has decided that that's not the same thing that he wants to do compared to Frank Reich calling the plays. Thielen can still have spike weeks, so I still would be willing to play him. But I think now, and I would be willing to play him more so now the chalk field's probably off him. If the price comes down, play Thielen. If the price stays where it is, don't play Thielen. Is basically how it goes. Guys, just outside the top 10, Mike Williams, obviously he's been hurt for the year, so that doesn't matter. Mike Evans for our pal Gamblestein, right outside the top 10. Brandon Ayuk, Devontae Adams, Nico Collins, Garrett Wilson. Those are your guys outside the top 10. Not too far behind is Amari Cooper, and shockingly, really close to Amari Cooper is Noah Brown, because Noah Brown has a 0.63 EPA per target. He's also now up to 5.8 targets per game. And because he's so efficient and also getting 1.2 deep shots per game, Noah Brown is in play. And Noah Brown is ahead of DJ Moore, DK Metcalf, Chris Olave, Chris Godwin, and Michael Pittman. So the Noah Brown surge is, in my opinion, real and something that should be noted, at least as long as Nico's out. But even with Nico back in, I think he still should. All right, get to tight ends, and we'll close it out here. Tight ends, of course, should be a breezy one to get through. Of course, we see our ceremonial Taylor Swift up top because Travis Kelce's number one again. And I really do think, I guess it depends if Jefferson is back this week. If Jefferson is not back, I think Hawkinson's going to claim number one heading into next week. Hawkinson's workload again, 48% target share, which is batshit insane last week, despite the rib injuries and all of that. Kelce, though, we'll see what happens heading into next week with this spot going against the Eagles. Some reports that Taylor does not have concerts that week. It should be attendance. And as we have seen, that matters because Travis Kelce has played roughly 30 yards better in games where Taylor Swift has appeared, in games where she has not. So, and that's now not, it's still a smallish sample size, it's big enough to note it. So Travis Kelce in at number one for now. The red zone work, 1.5 red zone targets a game, 9 targets overall. Kelce is at 9. Hawkinson is now at 9.5 targets per game. So these are your two elite tight ends. Mark Andrews is suffering because of Baltimore's offense just not needing to score through him, quite frankly. And honestly, they don't even need the offense on the field to score. So that's a big problem point for Mark Andrews as well. Andrews, though, 1.4 red zone targets per game. So if the Ravens get in a game where they have to pass, like, he's going to benefit. If they get in a game where they just keep running it like they have, he's not going to benefit. And that's basically what it is for Mark Andrews. So I think it is now a very clear 1, 2, 3. And honestly, for Kelce and Hawkinson, at least as long as Jefferson is out, it's 1A, 1B. When Jefferson comes back in, I think it becomes more of a clearly defined 1, 2, 3 again, with Kelce, Hawkinson, Andrews being 1, 2, 3. Number 4 on the list, George Kittle. 0.62 EPA for George Kittle per target is insane, especially for a tight end. He's breaking big plays as well, getting 0.8 deep targets per game, which is the most of the top 10 tight ends here. Kittle's games, you know what it is. He's going to have spike weeks. He's going to have down weeks. That's the biggest issue with Kittle for me, but that sums it up pretty well. Laporta going the wrong way, 0.23 EPA per target. No issue with him, really. But he's just, I think we're seeing the tier break really happen now between the elite guys and him. Still happy with where he drafted him, but Laporta, I think, coming a little bit down in a way where he just can't stay ahead because these guys are finally showing their true ceilings. Dalton Schultz, not that far behind as well, again, riding with CJ Stroud. Ferguson rising with Dak Prescott. Obviously, in a game where CeeDee Lamb doesn't go off, you're probably going to see Ferguson get more usage. And Ferguson as well, getting 1.9 red zone targets per game is the best red zone workload for any tight end in the league. So Ferguson always has upside. Cole Kmet, we'll see what happens with Justin Fields coming back in. Kmet's, again, a guy who's going to have spike weeks, going to have down weeks. Nothing too crazy with Kmet, but the usage has been pretty good. 6 targets a game is, again, firmly second-tier tight end, but he could definitely lose some work moving forward if DJ Moore gets a little bit more, especially when Justin Fields comes back in. Evan Ingram, Dallas Goedert, nothing too exciting here at tight end. I think that closes out pretty well. How does the spread between these guys work? Like, is a 1 to 2 point difference huge? No, basically it gets pretty flat as we get towards the middle tier where Cole Kmet's 13.2, Goddard 12.9, Logan Thomas 12.4. I might be mixing these up. But basically, like, it gets pretty flat towards this middle tier. The biggest jumps are up top. So guys like Taysom Hill, without accounting for his rushing stats, is at 5.5. Then Juwan Johnson's at 5.4. So it gets like flatter as you go down. The biggest jumps are going to be up top. I think that covers it, guys. And frankly, I feel like ass, and I think I need some things to go come out of my ass right. That's the kind of show we have here, guys. You can know that I got the fucking sick shits. So please subscribe down below. Please hit the like button. Please do all that stuff. You can see the flashing GIF. Follow what it says. Also hit the join button down below. $4.99 a month. Shouts to the Squirt Squad as always. Now I have to add to it. Gamble sign going to be added to the list, but you can add yourself these credits by hitting the join button for $4.99 a month. Join the community here on Splash Play, the only show that'll tell you when the host has diarrhea. I appreciate all of you for being here, and I will drink some Kool-Aid. Yeah, there we go, guys. Get it in good. I'll be back tomorrow for the showdown video, of course. Appreciate all you guys being here with me, and check me out later today on Stochastic. Deeper dive at 5 o'clock. Doing NBA. I'm going to go do my NBA prep right now. Appreciate all you hanging out with me, and I will see you guys again soon. So please enjoy your days, and of course, good luck. Bye. Wait, no, that's the background. Fuck, hold on. Enjoy your days. Good luck.